Well, I did say we got somebody who'd recorded number ones in the building and in the studio, and he's actually with me now. It's the guy that actually sang that song, Frank Highfield. Good morning.
Tony, good morning to you.
I remember being a kid watching you in a very posh suit singing that on top of the
I
Pops.
always used to wear a posh suit.
Yeah?
These days we walk around like slobs, but I used to always dress up nicely.
We've all picked up the American bad habit of dressing like slobs, haven't we, really? But hey...
Not on shows, I don't. No. I always dress smartly.
Well, this is radio and you're being FaceTimed, so you'll end up on the web with this one.
We're going down in history, are we?
We're going down in history. We are probably end up on YouTube by the time our tech boys have finished with it and put the voices to it all. They're very clever. It's the sort of thing that, of course, you have today. You never had that sort of thing back in the day, did you?
What sort of thing?
Well, the technology. The technology wasn't there.
Have the technology. No.
Exactly. You had a microphone and you used to sing. Was it actually live?
Actually,
Top of the Pops?
I started off when we didn't have microphones. Even you weren't guaranteed of that. You certainly never had monitors. You could never hear yourself when you were performing on stage.
So how did you manage?
You learn to sort of yell to the back. It's a bit like pantomime. You just get out there and yell. You know?
Oh, no, he's not. It was a bit like that, was it, really? Yeah, because, I mean, the remarkable thing for me really is, and I did ask you beforehand, you're actually 79. You're 80 this year, aren't you, in November?
Yes. Yeah,
we're all getting older, don't worry. It's all right.
I know it's getting very close, isn't it?
But you're still touring.
I put in my order that on my birthday, I want to have a whole heap of dancing girls and all that sort of business on my birthday.
Whole heap of dancing girls.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to the interesting stuff.
Dancing girls.
Yeah, now we're getting to the interesting stuff, aren't we? Really? Yeah. Am I right? You started out yodeling.
I didn't start out yodeling here in Britain because I did in Australia, right?
Yeah.
But when I got here to Britain, what happened? My manager said to me, "Don't yodel, whatever you do." He said, "It'll typecast you for the rest of your life." Well, I was on the Royal Variety Performance, and I got a note down from the Queen Mum, and she said, "Would you yodel for me?" You say, and she asked for a song called "Ragtime Cowboy Joe."
Yeah,
I didn't know that one. But I got up and did one I used to do in Australia, and that was she taught me to yodel. Yeah, so that was the first time I did it. I disobeyed my manager. What would you do?
And the thing is, he wasn't wrong, was he? Because it is still with you today, isn't it?
Exactly.
Frank Highfield, he's the one that yodeled. Never mind the fact that he had some very, very big number ones.
There's nothing to do with anything.
No.
Because people always remember me for I remember you.
Yeah.
But I've always said, at my demise, they're not going to remember I remember you. It's going to end up being yodeler.
Really?
Yeah.
You think?
And I only recorded one song.
What was your preference then? Was straight singing or the yodeling? What was your preference?
Well, I always had falsetto in things. I always used my falsetto. That was the image that I projected. That's where I started. So it was used no matter what I was doing, whether I was singing a classic song or anything. You still had the falsetto there.
Yeah. Now, you were born funnily enough, in this country, in Warwickshire,
Coventry.
A few years ago, yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And where's the connection with Australia, or did you just, or did the whole family move to Australia?
It worked the other way around. My parents were both Australians.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And when they came out here for my father to further his career. Right, and that's why we ended up in Coventry. Yeah. I don't remember anything about Coventry. I was only 3 years old when we moved.
Oh, I see. And you moved back to Australia.
No, we went right through the war.
Yeah,
and that's where I got my first break. Actually, singing in the air raid shelters.
Oh, right,
in front of the kids. Yeah. So that was where I first got the feeling this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I was only 6 at the time.
Yeah.
But I made that decision.
The air raid shelters, of course, in London could have been the tube stations, couldn't they?
Yeah. Well, as soon as the war had finished, though, we were it was 1948.
Yeah.
And I was 10, so we'd moved over to Australia by that time.
Yeah.
And I got that first 10 years after. I was 13 when I started there. And through to the next 10 years in Australia, I was recording and what have you. So I'd had that behind me before I even came over.
Yeah. Do you see Australia more as home now than the UK?
Oh, it is.
Or you have 2 homes?
Yeah, I do. I live in Australia.
Yeah.
And I come out whenever I can because I always enjoy coming out here. Yeah,
Long way to go,
I miss
isn't
the
it, though?
sense of humour here. I love it. Yeah, so I like to sort of get a few gigs when I'm here.
You telling me the Aussies haven't got a sense of humour?
Oh, they do, but it's a different sense of humour. I love the British sense of humour.
You do.
Oh, yeah, it's funny.
So you did 10 years in Australia, you got to the UK, and of course you were around at the time of the Beatles. And it must have been really, really interesting times.
Yeah, actually, talking about the Beatles, I gave them their first show. I don't know whether you knew that.
Well, you just told me.
I just told you.
Yeah.
It's true. I was in Liverpool at the time, and what had happened was while I was in Liverpool, topping the bill there, and it was at the time I had Lovesick Blues.
Yeah.
A guy came up to see me, and that was Brian Epstein. And he mentioned that he wanted to get the Beatles on my show because I'd never heard of the Beatles, and neither had anybody else at that stage because they'd only worked in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get them out so they could be seen. We opened in Peterborough, and that was their first show with me in Peterborough.
Did they tour with you, or was it just that one show?
No, it only ended up being one show because the audience didn't like it. Would you believe?
Well, didn't like them or you?
No, they didn't like the Beatles.
Really?
They were too loud. You know.
Good grief.
Yeah, but I mean, they were green. It was the beginning of their career and everything, you know. And of course, it didn't take long before they had their hits as well.
Because Cliff was also around at the time, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
So Cliff was the big star at the time.
Yes,
I
he
remember
was.
this quite clearly, being a little boy, and all of a sudden Cliff was the big star, and all of a sudden the Beatles were there, and somewhere in the middle of it all was you.
Yeah. The funny thing was, when we first came out here with the manager, my manager was Australian.
Yeah.
He came up before me to set things up. And when I came out here, it wasn't about a year, I guess, and he took over the Shadows at the time when they had Apache. Yeah. So naturally, they then being with us, Cliff came up with us as well. So in our stable, there were a lot of big names.
Yeah, I'm going to say, but you all did your own thing. So the Beatles went on to obvious, superstardom. Yeah. Cliff's still Cliff, isn't he? Yeah. Really, and you went on to do your own thing, which was a slightly different path, wasn't it?
Well, no.
You were still singing, but it was.
Had all I remember it was a big hit in America as well. And when I say as well, at that time it was one of the first British acts to get up, right up into the charts in America. And it was done on a company called VJ Label, which was a young company that had just taken over a group called the Four Seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got my big hit, they turned around to me and they said, when we got your record, we took as a job lot a group called the Beatles. And they had never heard of the Beatles, but they liked what they did. And the guy said, would you make a record with the Beatles? Because you're established and they're not.
Yeah.
So, and what it was called was Jolly What. It came out, an album called Jolly What. Frank Zappa and the Beatles, on stage, it said.
Yeah.
Nothing on stage about it. but I like the sleeve note. On the sleeve notes it read, we hope you like this copulation.
Really?
That's not the word to use on it.
Not quite the right word, I don't think, somehow.
That's typical American. That's what they thought it was.
We're going to take a break there, play another piece of music, one that you actually mentioned, and it was another one of your number ones.
I got a feeling called a blue, lonesome for baby said goodbye. I'm lonesome, I got the lovesick blues.
You see, Frank, you do a bit of yodeling on that, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's an old song actually. It was done by Hank Williams.
Yeah,
and what we did was to put a twist beat to it. And that's why it got away, I think, because the twist was all the rage at that time on the continent.
Yeah, we're going back to 1962. It's one of three hits that you had at number one on the trot. Then you had a number four, and then you had another number one, which is
Unbelievable.
Confess Him, which came on. Yes, I mean, it was a remarkably successful time for you.
Yes, it was.
Did it all come as a shock, or was it what you'd planned for, or
well,
what?
to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't come out here with the idea of making records specifically. To me, making records was just a sideline issue that you hope to do to get your name out there. That's all. I came out to play the London Palladium. That was my big dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved the theatre.
And you did, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah. But it was the record actually that got me there.
Yeah.
Rather than the other way around.
Oftentimes that's
It's
the
funny
ways
how
that you can plan things, and it works out completely the opposite way to the way you wanted it to, but you get to where you want to get to eventually.
Yeah, but I didn't think that I'd end up sort of making 3 number ones. Pop star? Me? I never thought about it.
Well, I was going to say it's one of those things that it was very, very different in those days when you've got acts now. I mean, you've got somebody like Ed Sheeran who can put out. They don't put out an album. They put out a number of songs.
That's right.
And I think at one point he had about 15 songs in the charts at one time. I mean, that would have been unthinkable in your day, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't happen. Yeah.
No, so it's a very, very different thing.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, which is the better experience? Do you think?
Oh, I think what we had was a more true experience, because we're talking about records that were bought by people over the shops. These days, people download stuff. Yeah, and it's not quite the same thing, is it?
Well, it's never quite the same as going through into a record shop and sort of wading through a whole pile of vinyl. I must confess that I used to do a little bit of that myself. But I mean, you obviously had. I mean, in the early days, was it difficult to find a record deal, or did you go looking for a record deal?
Well, I'd already had a record deal in Australia.
Yeah.
I was with EMI there. So when I came over here, I naturally went to EMI here. And so they took me, I suppose, really, he liked what I did, but he gave me the benefit of the doubt because of the fact that I'd worked for so long with the EMI, and he took me out and gave me a 2-year contract.
Yeah. Did they choose the songs, or did you choose the songs?
Well, to start with, I chose the first one, and Norrie thought it was a bit too country, and he said country doesn't sell.
Is that Norrie Paramore?
Yeah.
Because he worked with Cliff, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah. We had all the big names at that time. So what happened was that record that I first released was one called Lucky Devil.
That's right, yeah.
And it made the charts for me. And
Number 22.
Yeah. Not very high, but it was the first one I had. You know?
It's a notch on the rung, on the ladder, isn't it, really?
But I had nothing after that much at all.
Well, the disappointment for you must have been the second one, Got to Get a Date, went to number 49, and you probably thought, oh dear, what have I done wrong?
Well, I really sort of lost a bit of interest back then, too, because people were telling me what to do, and I was relying on people to give me the instructions. I figured that they knew more than I would know, you see.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Norrie turned around to me and said, Frank, we've got one record left, and if you don't come up with a hit, your contract's done, that'll be it, you know.
It was that harsh in those days, though, wasn't it, really?
Yeah. And so I'd been waiting for them to give me material, and I suddenly thought, well, damn it, I'll do what I want to do, you know. And then I came up with the songs that I wanted to do. And then I came up with I Remember You, and that's how that happened.
Did you find that, or you didn't write it, did you?
No, I didn't.
It was written by Johnny Mercer, wasn't it? Yeah. So how did you find that?
But I must tell you, when we had the enormous great big hit, I actually met Johnny Mercer, and I was touring the States, and he came up to me and he said, "Congratulations," he said, on your record. He said, "It's a good song." And I said, "Thank you." Well, you wrote it. And he said, "Did I?" He had no idea he'd written it. He's written so many songs.
Yeah.
And because he probably didn't recognise what I did with it, because I made it country.
And you earned him a bit of pocket money as well along the way, from the sounds of it as well.
That's right.
And of course, from there on, life changed very dramatically for you, I would imagine, from being a singer come over from Australia that not many people in this country know, to all of a sudden being seriously famous. Being on top of the pops in those days was quite something, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a big deal.
It was a big deal. You had to be on it, didn't you? And was it all true?
But the thing I really enjoyed, I mean, apart from playing the London Palladium, now I was working, in different parts of the world, and I was getting onto, like, for instance, I worked the Grand Ole Opry, and I was working in Las Vegas, and all these wonderful places I'd only ever dreamed of. So that went on for most of my life. Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it.
And you're still touring, aren't you?
Yeah. And I'm still playing theatres.
Yeah, you got, according to my reckoning, you got 2 dates to come. One on the 26th of May down in Torquay, in a place called Babbacombe.
Yeah.
And then in Huntingdon on the 27th. Touring doesn't get any easier, does it?
Doesn't.
You're still in one place today and a million miles away tomorrow. Yeah.
I think the agents just look at a map and they throw a dart and they say, we'll send him there. And we'll send him.
Do you ever get tired of it?
Well, the travelling can be a bit hard going, particularly when you finish the show late at night and you travel back to base. I base myself always in Northampton because I've got friends there.
Yeah.
So I go backwards and forwards every night after the show.
Really? So you got to drive from Torquay?
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, well, you have a driver.
I've got a driver
in
can do
luxury,
that.
you have a driver, of course. Yeah, you can snooze in the back, can't you? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I can't because I've got to stay awake to keep him awake.
Oh, you've got to give him the instructions on how to get there as well, haven't you? I
Exactly.
suppose. But you've got to go from Torquay up to Northampton
Yes.
after a show.
Bit hard going, isn't it?
That's tough.
Yes,
That's
it is.
tough. I mean, it's what a lot of performers actually do.
Yeah.
But
I-
for the
I
most
love-
of
I
us
love
mere
it.
mortals, just wonder how on earth you continue to do it. As I said, you're 79 now. You're 80 in November. How long are you going to plan to do this for?
Well, I don't know. As long as I can, I guess.
That's
As
wonderful.
long as people want
Yeah.
me to do it, I'll do it.
And the stage show, I presume, still consists of a whole bunch of the hits.
All the hits and also it's stories as well, which is nice. I can relate the whole stories and how they happen.
Do you do
There's
any
a
of
lot
the
of good
yeah.
stories?
I'm
out
sure
there.
there are. Do you do any of the 60s road shows that are going that are about as well
No.
with some of the other acts?
No, I haven't.
Because I know
That'd be fun
a
to
version
do.
of Jerry and the Pacemakers still tours as
Yeah.
part of an act, and I think the Tremolos still are still out there
Yes,
somewhere
I
as
heard
well.
that.
And I didn't know whether you sort of got involved in any of that because there's quite a large scene for some of the
that's the
what
way
we
to
can
do
only
it.
describe as retro acts. I think is probably it.
That's the way to do it. It takes the edge, and the worry of doing it all by yourself, really.
It's given you a new decent
Although-
life, that, hasn't it? Now.
And I've been a one-man show I enjoy doing.
How long is the show
Nobody
itself?
to blame but myself. then,
Yeah.
is there?
How long is the show?
It's 2 hours.
It's 2 hours. So it's an hour, then a break, and then an hour, and it's a lot of stories as well.
Yeah.
And I'm presuming that the story of the Beatles and all that sort of thing's all in there
Oh,
somewhere.
yeah. A lot more than I told you.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, when we've got time, we'll get you back and we'll chat to you properly.
Okay.
But for now, Frank Sinatra. We're going to Frank Sinatra. I've
thank
just
you very
elevated
much.
you to. I've just elevated you to even higher ground. Frank Highfield. This is one that.
he's
this
dead
is another
now.
one of your hits, so we're going to leave you with this. All right. Okay. Thank you, Frank.